There was a blog put out by a millennial a couple of years ago, and it was titled, "What Do Real Estate Agents Do Anyway?" So it's like, well, I can find the house, I can get my own financing, I can hire my own inspector. Why not just go right to the listing agent? Or what are they really do? What do I get out of paying extra to have these services, right? So I think the industry has really failed at articulating the real value that a really good real estate agent brings to the table. Unfortunately, Zillow, Realtor.com, and a lot of consumers think that real estate agents are overpaid door openers.
Shaune Corbett with Real Estate Success, and I am here with Barbara Schlinker. So it's Barb Has the Buyers, right? So I want to talk, what in the world does that mean? How can you be an agent and promote yourself as having the buyers? That would be a valuable proposition probably to sellers. So we're going to talk about that. And Barb also has a radio show. If you're in Colorado Springs, she has a regular ongoing radio show. I've actually jumped in and listened to a couple episodes, and it was very good information. It's right on the nose. It's ready to present things and give you value adds for people that are in that space as well. So welcome, Barb. Thank you for jumping on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So Barb, I always start with the beginning. You could have done a lot of things. I know you mentioned you were doing an air traffic controller. You worked in the military. You're a veteran, and you have certain unique skills and things you've learned there. How did that end up getting you into real estate? How did you end up getting into real estate in general?
Well, I was all into aviation. I mean, sitting up in the control towers, I got jealous, so I got my private pilot's license and kept getting all the licenses, became a commercial pilot for one glorious year. And my husband, he's retired now, but he was a airline pilot, former military, then airline pilot. And I love that. That's my passion. If I could do that all the time, I would. But the problem is our son came along, and there's just no way both of us could have been out of town with a baby. It was just too much. So, and also the mommy genes kicked in. I really didn't want to be away from him. So my dad suggested, why don't you go into real estate? And I've always liked houses and stuff. And I like the idea of the freedom. And that was what I thought we would get in real estate, but actually, no, it can be a 24/7 job if you don't manage it properly. So I ended up, after our son was born, I got my license and hung my license with a broker, just like everybody else does, being completely clueless on how to do real estate. And having the background of aviation, air traffic control, as well as being a pilot, all of those jobs involved very detailed checklist and very specific ways that you did and said things. But when I got into real estate, it was nothing like that. The test that we took had nothing to do with what we actually did. And nobody really took me under their wing to train me on the how to. And the problem was the other agents in my office were effectively my competition. So they didn't want to help, right? I would ask questions and they'd reluctantly answer. But the super secret that was going on at the time, and it's probably still to this day the same, is how does she get business and how does he get business and how come they're getting awards? They never really talked about it. So I ran into, from one of the ads I got in the National Association magazine, somebody, his name is Craig Proctor. He's up in Canada. He's now solely a coach. He's not practicing real estate, but in the ad, he goes, I sold 546 homes last year. And I'm thinking, wow, that's amazing. How did you do that? And then I ordered his system. I went to his conference and then became a coaching student of him for a lot of years. And what was cool was that we would go to conferences a couple times a year. And every time we went, we're meeting with other kind of like-minded, really successful real estate agents, and they all shared, unlike what I had in my own market. So it was awesome. I would basically implement the system, and I learned what's called direct response marketing because I moved to Colorado Springs right before our son was born. And
Let me hold you up just a second. I'm going to bring you back to direct response market because I want to hear little bit more about that. But this is
okay,
really important, right? So brick and mortar, which is the standard way that most of us knew about real estate 20 plus years ago. And then the internet invented or created opportunities for buyers and sellers to have the power of information in their hands. And it also gave leverage opportunities to build cloud-based brokerages, which is kind of an evolutionary step for most of us. Probably half of all agents are not even in brick and mortar anymore. They're in cloud based, and it will be the future. We have to find ways to connect a little bit better because it's a little hard when we're all in different isolations. But I wanted to talk about the brick and mortar thing. This is really important. Most agents that are in these type of offices, and I'll call them my name. It doesn't, no one cares. It's KW or Coldwell Banker or Remax. They created a incredible foundation years and years ago, but things have kind of evolved. And the reason why people don't share is because you have one office. Like, for example, I have one in my hometown of Flower Mound, Texas, and there is probably 600 agents in one office, and they're operating out of one zip code. No, they're not going to share. I mean, everyone
yeah,
literally is their competition in their own office. So it
yeah,
creates that competitive competition, which does create really good agents, but it also makes it so your workforce is, you can't let everybody know your stuff. And I
mhm,
didn't think about real estate that way. I've always shared. It sounds like you've always kind of had more of a collaborative effort. And like Barbara, you could share everything with me, and I'm not going to be you. It's
yeah.
the same thing. I could share everything I'm doing, even if we're in the same market, you're not going to be me. So I share everything and I do it all the time. So that is a breath of fresh air. So I wanted to cover that. That was a really important thing. And then I want to know, what is direct response marketing? Because that's not something that anyone shared here.
So direct response marketing it was basically made famous by Dan Kennedy. I don't think he was the originator of it, but basically it is marketing to consumers, making offers and getting them to contact you by making really good offers. And the basic format is you present a problem, you kind of rub in the problem a little bit, and you present a solution and a call to action to contact you. And all of my business right now is people contacting you. I don't do any outbound calling, although I probably will start doing that just on the leads that we're getting that we haven't reached yet. But they chase me down. In fact, 2 years ago, I discovered that on my website, I asked them to register and there was nothing that came after that. And I was like, oh, I need to follow up because I find that generally clients aren't always ready the moment they raise their hand. Could be a process. They need more than one touch. Some
Yeah,
of
it's
them do.
rare.
Some of
It's
them,
rare they're ready to go like tomorrow. They normally
right.
need the 3 to 6 months. That's correct. Yeah,
Right.
nobody
So what
wants to
I
sell a
did,
house. They don't sell houses in a day. I mean, they have to really, they got to be like making that emotional commitment, and then they're still 3 to 6 months later.
yeah, and when I do finally get in the door and sit down and meet with them, what they say to me is, well, I checked you out online, which I think is really cool. I'm glad because they're trying to do their due diligence. They don't know me, they just are responding to an ad. So now consumers are looking at reviews, they're looking at what you have online. Are you present? Have you sold anything? Zillow shows all your sales and all that. They're doing their research before you get there. But before you get there, before you even get invited, it's a process, right? And so one of the ways I do it is with the radio show. So the radio show is full of content for consumers about how to buy and sell homes, mostly the selling side, but there are some buyer sequences in there. And it's fun, and I just get tons of calls. And people, I fold in real life stories to make it more interesting so they can actually learn it. Because sometimes if you just give a bunch of data, it's boring. So there is no end to exciting drama stories in real estate. Can't you? I'm
Oh
sure
yeah,
you know
every
that.
transaction is different. And speaking of research, like I'm really consider who I interview for, the podcast because I want to hit people that have done a lot.
Yeah.
I ran into someone the other day and they've connected me with a couple of agents that are really successful. And they're like, well, why not me? And I'm like, well, you haven't sold more than 100 houses. Like, and 100 is a big number. 99.9% agents will
Total,
never sell 100 houses.
like
Um,
total or in 1 year?
yeah, no, just total. They hadn't even sold
Oh,
that many. And I was like, well, it's not that. you haven't done a great job. You have, but you got to have enough experience to be able to share the high view, right? The things you're sharing, Barb, work because you've got the history and the credit to show it works.
Yeah.
Most agents don't sell anywhere near that. And I already checked you out before, and I know you were like more than 700 houses, which you may have
In
sold
my
more than
career,
that.
I think it's about 3,000
Yeah,
since I started.
we're good. I know you've got plenty,
Yeah.
but the reverse or the direct response marketing is something that agents don't have maybe the belief in themselves, or they really just don't offer a value proposition. Asking people, do you want a free seller report? Yeah, that's a pretty low bar. Everyone kind of throws that out there, and that's a starting point. But you may have to offer something with some meat, right? Like a guarantee to communicate with you. That's a good one most people can start because it's in your hands.
Yeah.
If I don't talk with you, because that's the number one complaint from sellers, right? Is the
Sure.
agents throw it on the MLS,
And
they
then ghost
do
them.
an open house, they start praying, and then they don't talk to them for 2 or 3 months. And then the seller's like,
Right.
what the heck's going on? Are we selling it? What are we doing? And a commitment to them to every single week that you're going to give them feedback and updates and a plan is something that carries some weight. I mean, that's just a simple example anybody can do.
Right. And they don't, in fact, our state exclusive right to sell agreements don't make any promises. It's all about committing the client to them. That's all that's in there. And, we have to play fair. That's all it says. And so they could cancel based on that, but what do they promise? So we fold in another agreement that talks about what we're actually promising when we get them to sign. We have two agreements that we use. We have to use the state ones or we get turned
Th- This
into
is
the
this is
police.
really, really important. I'm glad you said that. So I made a post. I'm in a number of Facebook groups because I'm helping as many agents as I can. And I made a post that I'm looking to leave NAR now. And of
Oh, I'd
course,
love to.
that caused an explosion with everyone. Oh, but they're advocates for agents and they're advocates for
No,
this.
no,
I
no,
said, and they said, you're going to lose your MLS, you're going to lose your super access. And I said, no, you're not. You better check. Most MLSs are detaching themselves from the association requirement. Mine did. And I'm in the biggest MLS in the US, at least the association that we're in, the local association that we're in. And you can leave them. And what they do is they increase the cost of your local association instead, but you still can do non-member MLS access, and you can still get access to the super and stuff like that. But it created all this controversy, and everyone assumes that NAR has your best interests. And I said, no, they have agreements that they're not even pro-consumer. I said, I go way
Sure.
beyond what they're offering to consumers, and that's who they're supposed to be protecting, not
They
just
work against the agents. They always have. If you go back in history, and I've been licensed now this is my 30th year. When I first started, I remember 98, I got a website and my colleagues in the office are like, ooh, you have a website. What do you do with it? And I had no idea. But the problem at the time, and still to this day, there's 1,500 different MLSs in the country. They're all different software. They don't talk to each other. And so their big idea was to aggregate all those MLSs into Realtor.com. But then NAR gave Realtor.com to Rupert Murdoch. We don't even own the word realtor. It's trademarked by Rupert Murdoch,
hmm.
right? And so they basically sold us down the river to a tech company, and then Realtor.com sells back leads on our own listings to us.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
that's what Zillow does
Yeah,
too.
we pay for the association and they sell the leads back to us. Very expensive, by the way. Realtor.com leads are expensive.
Right. And not only that, but the agent's name on your own listing. Now, it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to go to get in front of a client, to get them to sign to an agreement, all the investment that it takes place to market appropriately these days online to attract buyers. And yet the National Association designed all the MLSs to bury the listing agent's contact information. It's way down on page 10 of that listing. And they put the other brokerage's names on top. I don't do that.
Yeah.
I do
So
something
there are
completely different.
ways and you'd have to create your own form in order to be able to communicate your message, your value propositions to the client, the buyer or the seller. So you don't have
Right.
to live and die by, the NAR association. And realtor is not developed the credit that it once had. I
Mhm.
don't think it's appreciated or looked at as like some type of great thing to be. I think just being a sales professional, real estate agent isn't much different than just being a realtor.
Yeah. And so, I mean, to me, it's been nothing but trouble. I get fine notices on 100% of my listings, and I'm activating listings, multiples of them every week. I get fine notices on all of them. And it's just some little detail isn't correct. And if I don't stay on top of that, then the second notice, I'm getting charged a fine. So I view the MLS as like a club. It's a realtor club that we pay for those services to be into this database where they put together all the homes for sale. But now it's reached a point where if you opt out and you're a member, like if you don't put your listing in that MLS, I just tested this last year and put it in my alternative one, boom, $500 fine. And I'm like, and I'm sure they made up the rule on the fly. When I called them, I said, wait a minute, we're complying with the rule. It's in an MLS, it's just not in yours. Well, you have to do it our way. And I'm like, where does it say that? So to me, they're dragging on the business. And just like you said, they're not very consumer friendly, which for me is the most important thing. The sellers want their homes sold. They get very frustrated when somebody comes to the house. And so they've gotten all this preparation to show their home, pick up kids and dogs and cats, get the house cleaned up. They are thinking that agent has already verified that buyer can buy, and that agent knows what that buyer wants to buy, and they want this house, right? They've got really good pictures online. But no, we get just the opposite feedback. Oh, I was looking for a different floor plan. I'm like, we published the floor plan. You can see it's not a ranch, it's a two-story. The other thing in our state, I don't know if it's true in Texas, we're not, there's no requirement for the agent to verify the buyer can buy. So a lot of agents will buy Zillow leads and they're very expensive, 40% a deal. I mean, I don't even know how you can make profit on that. But so we tested buying Zillow leads last year. And if people don't know what that is, if you go look up on Zillow, there's a blue button that says, want to schedule a tour? Next tour is at 11 o'clock. So the consumers see that when they click on that button, they think they're getting the listing agent, but actually no, they're getting some random agent that doesn't even know what the house, anything about the house, that's paying for buyer leads on Zillow. And they sell that lead to about 6 different agents at the same time. And
Yeah.
whoever answers the phone the fastest gets the worm, essentially. But guess what the consumer wants in that process? The consumer wants what they offered, which was want to see the house. Okay. So we tested this. So if we don't, what I call pop tart out of the toaster and show up at the door, they'll get somebody else to do it. That's been our experience. And then the NAR threw in this rule that said, oh, after this litigation took place, that we have to get a signed agreement with the buyers before we show the home. So we say that to a consumer and they have no interest in meeting with us.
Yeah, you
They
start
just
putting up
move
the
on.
walls, it makes it very hard. Obviously, homes sell consumers, right? Loans don't, agents don't, the homes do. They want to see homes, they want to get the emotional experience, and whatever
Right.
they got to get to that, because we're in a instant gratification society. I want to be in that
Yeah.
home. I want to see it, and if I like it, then I'll go through the trouble of applying and doing everything else. If I don't like it, well, then we won't waste each other's time. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, too late, because I had to show up here and show you
Yeah.
the house.
So we turn everything on its head and do something completely different. We had an open house last weekend that had 70 people through in 1 hour. The weekend before, this is not a low price home, 725,000. That's high for our market. Average price is in the mid fives. That one had 90 people come through in 1 hour and we
It's
got multiple
incredible.
offers. I do that every weekend, even when the market is correcting slightly here.
So you can still create and generate that much open house traffic. Is it
Mhm.
by squeezing everyone out and that's the only way you can see it? Is that one particular way that you hyper focus it so you maybe have a coming soon? You project it out
Yeah,
there.
that's one way. Give
It's
give people
unique.
the
The price is
time.
right. Everything's kind of lines up.
Yeah, because here's the thing. If I put the house on the market Monday, we get an offer Tuesday. How do you know the weekend buyer wouldn't pay more money?
Correct. Yeah.
right? Everybody's working or busy. Not everybody has an opportunity to drop everything and just show up. So we do that for a reason, to give everybody a chance to throw their hat in the ring. The
Yep.
one last weekend we did, to do this right, it has to be priced appropriately and it has to be marketed appropriately. But the one we did last weekend, we had 7 offers and it sold for 10% over asking price.
You know, that those same buyers, even if they made the offer on Monday, they show up on Saturday and there's 69 other buyers in there. They're going
Right.
to pay more,
Yeah, some
and they
will, but
will.
not everybody, but some will.
But there's
And
that,
then I,
yeah, some will stay firm, but either they want it or they don't. If they're going to put the energy in to make that offer, they're going to make an offer that as high as they're willing to lose. And that should be the way that they should. I would think that increases those opportunities. That's probably you get people paying more,
yeah,
increasing
and the
energy.
other thing I'm finding, which is very interesting, there was a blog put out by a millennial a couple of years ago. It was really good, and it was titled "What Do Real Estate Agents Do Anyway?"
Yeah. Seen
And it
plenty of
would say,
those.
yeah, so it's like, well, I can find the house, I can get my own financing, I can hire my own inspector, I can, why not just go right to the listing agent? Or what are they really do? What do I get out of paying extra to have these services, right? So I think the industry has really failed at articulating the real value that a really good real estate agent brings to the table. And they don't. Unfortunately, Zillow, Realtor.com, and a lot of consumers think that real estate agents are overpaid door openers on the buyer side.
Yeah.
So we're seeing more and more traffic come to open houses that are not represented. And I get more and more buyers coming directly to me that are not represented. And it's because of the way we market. If I followed the NAR rules, they wouldn't be able to find my number very easily. But I don't do that.
I like that. Those are some, I would definitely having some follow-ups for some of that because that's agents don't know how to properly market to unrepresented buyers. They're always
Mhm.
trying to find an agent to go do the work for them. And that is probably not in your seller's best interest. We want to create interest, we want to increase price, and agents are going to work against them. So if we can do
Right.
it in-house, we can create a win-win for everybody. And the buyer wins because they gets an exclusive home that's not even on the MLS a lot of times, based on the way you sell some of these. And it's just a really good opportunity. Everybody wins. I wanted to
Yeah, but
ask you,
I'm not running down buyer agents. I'm not saying that at all. I think that I work with buyers on occasion and they want the expertise, they want the experience, they want the knowledge. Okay. That's really what consumers want from the buyer perspective. It's not just door opening, but
sure.
that's what most of the industry thinks that we do. And to be honest, that's what a lot of them do. They open doors, they fill in a 10-minute contract. And what I find a lot in my open houses, the agents are telling their buyers to just go to the open house. And if you like it, I'll write a 10-minute contract and I'll make 3%. That's what they don't even care to be there with their buyer, which is unbelievable. But there are some great, experienced, quality agents out there. I just think what's missing is most of them are not trained to articulate what value they actually bring to the table.
I can see that. Most agents don't think about providing enough information to show that they have value propositions to offer them, whatever it is that to help them.
Yeah,
Um,
and unfortunately, what we see them do, because nowadays, if you're going in a house, you got to expect you're going to be on camera, right?
right.
Most houses, a lot of houses have cameras either inside or out. And I'll get feedback from my sellers going, why did the agent say that? Why are they running down my house? Why did they talk them out of my house? And so that's how some agents think they bring value, to critique the home in front of their buyers and try to position themselves as knowing something. And I recently had one, I have one of my accounts, I represent the Secretary of Veterans Affairs for some of the homes in the area that have unfortunately have been taken back in foreclosure. I've had that account for 12 years, 13 years. And some of these homes are a mess when we get them. It's post foreclosure. It's been deeded back to the VA. I had one last year that had structural problems, and the home was only 3.5 years old. So this young Army private bought it new, and we have basements here. The basement started crushing up and cracking the ceiling and the drywall. But I made the mistake when I was marketing to kind of sugarcoat that. You could see the cracks in the great room, but you couldn't see that the trim around the doors was bowing out and separating from the walls. And so we had priced the home 100,000 below similar sales. So you're actively selling, Shaune. Don't you notice that when you see a home is priced 100,000 below similar sales?
Yeah, they're going to make a lot of assumptions.
Well, they could make assumptions, but it would get my little German Shepherd ears up and I'd be like, well, okay, why is it priced like that? What's going on? I would want to
Correct.
take the time to look into it some more. But that wasn't the reaction I got. We had 160 showings on that house. And so what I found is most of the agents were going in and then discovering it had problems, but I had in the private agent remarks, this home has structural settling. I even had it on their phone in showing time. All I had to do was click a link to get all the data. They didn't have to read the MLS, but I couldn't get them to read either.
So they're
And
in
so
a house
finally,
that's 100,000 below what it should be, and they're seeing these things, and they're not taking into account the destruction, the things they have to overcome. And then they're like, well,
right.
now we have to go and argue and negotiate those things when it's already built into the price.
It was. So what happened was the big surprise was I started getting complaints from buyers, other agents' buyers, calling me and saying, "You wasted my time." I'm like, I don't even know you. How did I do that? I drove all the way down there and I was disappointed. So what happened at this particular showing, they walked in the door, they saw the structural issues, buyer was disappointed. So the agent just throws me under the bus and says, "Barb should have told us that." And I'm
Yeah.
like, I did. And I asked the buyer, I said, well, wasn't it kind of a clue that it was priced like that? Or, and anyway, they did. It what I discovered was you have to be very transparent about those things, not just in the private description, but in the public description, because I can't rely on the average real estate agent to do any kind of research before they show up at the door with the buyer. And that was surprising to me. So I asked my brother, what do I do? He goes, just put it in the public description. So the NAR MLS made me strip those words out. I said, this home is structural settling. It has a builder warranty. We don't know if they're going to cover it. It's offered by the VA as is. And they stripped those words out and said, you can't say that. And I'm like, why can't I say that? And they said, because it's financial. I said, what part is financial? And they go, the word VA. I'm like, well, they're the owner. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's the owner
it
of
was not
records.
logical. It was pointless to argue with them. So, but I use an alternative MLS for the publicly facing sites where a majority of the buyers are. And I left it in there. And the big surprise to me was afterwards, after I posted that, I got a lot more buyer calls asking me questions and getting information. And right after that, it sold. We didn't change the price from there. So I
Okay.
think the lesson was, wow, agents aren't reading, they're not researching before they're opening the door. It's creating problems for me. And I decided, okay, that's it. I got to change my strategy and market directly to the consumer, the buyers, so they know what they're getting into because I know they're reading the description. I know they're looking at the pictures. They may not know the values. That's kind of what they rely on agents to do, but I'm finding that neither do the agents. Some of them, not all of them. Do you have that experience?
That they don't read the MLS when you're offering different specific things and the agent's not reading it. Yeah, often I get asked for, hey, can you send me the seller's disclosure? Can you send me? I'm like, they're all in there. You check that first. I
Right.
realize there's a lot of listing agents that don't post a lot of these things, but we've got a checklist. I learned from my friend Barb, we got checklists. So we
Yeah.
make sure we enter everything that you need to make an offer. I don't want to slow you down. I don't want you asking me and then we lose a day and then we go back and forth. If I've got a buyer ready to make an offer, I want you to submit it to them. Let's make an offer. Let's work it. One thing I do want to talk about is the number one reason that contracts are falling out. We have a high fallout rate. I think in a lot of different areas in the U.S. You mentioned that in Colorado Springs, we definitely do in Dallas Fort Worth. I find the number one reason is the inspection. So, what are some thoughts that you have? Because you have a particular approach to get ahead of issues with inspections to lower that number as much as you can. So, talk a little bit about what that means.
In our state, there is no license or qualification to be an inspector. I could be an inspector and I'm scary with a screwdriver in my hands. So it's not, it's very surprising what they come up with. These inspectors use weird gadgets. And the problem is they have influence over the buyer's decision as to whether or not that buyer is going to move forward. So if you've got some inspector that's just inventing things, like I had one that had a plumbing leak, did file a claim, treat for mold, went through all those steps. And even after that, after the home was remodeled and everything was resolved, the inspector talked the buyer into backing out over what they want. He talked them into doing another mold treatment, but there wasn't any mold. So I've had that happen multiple times. It's just very frustrating. Some of them aren't very skilled. I had one, we have a lot of acreage properties around here that went to the house, turned every single faucet on inside and outside, and ran it for 4 hours. That night, I get a text from the seller going, "How come there's sand in my sink and my tub?" And I'm like, oh no, I knew exactly what happened. The inspector ran the well dry.
Mm.
And that's a bad thing if you're sucking sand up through the pump and through the plumbing fixtures. That's not good for those things. But they don't know what they're doing. In fact, that same inspection report, he had a hose hooked up to this pressure gauge. The pressure read 0, but there was massive amount of water coming out the other end of the hose. I'm like, this guy's an idiot. And of course, the buyer walks away, right? And we kind of held on to the earnest money for a little while. We basically, earnest money is 100% refundable in Colorado. But in this case, we're like, we're not releasing until we get somebody to check out to see if you damage the pump, which is one thing that's in the contract that we can do. But I've had crazy things happen. I've had when the whole checking the sewer line came up, which started probably more recently, 2018.
Yeah,
Then we got these
you pressurize the system and it can cause damage.
Well, what they were doing is they were running sewer scopes without permission.
Mm.
They were pulling toilets without permission to run a camera through the sewer line and breaking things. And it became so frustrating. So I thought I was so smart. So I created this inspection policy that I would send to agents and go, okay, these are the rules. You can't pull a toilet without bringing a plumber. You can't, this is something else that they do. You can't ask the seller to leave their own home during the inspection. Does that happen to you?
Most of the time, we encourage them not to be there because we have
Right.
licensed
But
inspectors. There's not a lot of contests here. I mean, they have a standardized way that they have to write their language and put it on the inspection report, which I'm
I wish
listening
we
to
had
you and
that.
I'm like the Wild West. Holy cow.
It
I
totally is.
mean, I've sold a lot
So
of homes myself. I'd lose my mind trying everyone would be different. And
Yeah,
there's no
well,
way
that's
to,
what's going on
it's
here. And
crazy.
it's 80 pages of different each house. I basically created this policy, giving the agents instructions on what the rules are not. Because sometimes they'd say, well, can't you just give my inspector the combo and let him in the house for 3 hours and do his thing on his own? I'm like, no, they're not licensed. They don't have E&O insurance. It invalidates mine. So I created this policy here. These are the rules. You have to be there, etc. But then I discovered the agents aren't reading that either.
Yeah.
And so now I have to put it in the contract between the buyer and seller, especially things about checking the sewer lines, anything that's critical that I think might come up on for that particular house.
It's
But
crazy. Yeah,
it's
we our inspectors and appraisers are able to schedule through our MLS boards because they're licensed and they're accredited, so we know who they are and what they're doing, so they can schedule in their own, and then they get their own code.
yeah.
They can't access every house. They can access the specific house, and they can do it on their own, so they can schedule it on their own.
Well, and here's the thing is like you're representing a buyer, correct? And this is the most important part. It's a go, no go decision after we find out about the condition of the home. Yet I find that the agents really don't want to go to the inspection. I've had them put in writing, it's a waste of my time. That same agent called a lawyer over a $200 appliance dispute. But it's a waste of my time. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, just think about the time you have to spend. You show the house, you write a contract, maybe go to the inspection and do the walkthrough, maybe 5 hours to make tens of thousands of dollars. Okay. But they don't want to show up for the inspection. I want to be there. I want to know what the issues are. I want to put eyes on it so I can communicate effectively with the buyer and kind of calm them down about things that may get them excited, and then talk about things that I think they should address if it's broken. You know what I'm saying? And it's so frustrating to me that if they had their way, they would absolutely just not go. And just, I've had agents call me and go, well, can you just show your listing to my buyer? I don't want to drive that far. And one day I'm going to tell them, how about I just send you a check? Will that work? Because they don't want to work, but they want the money. I actually, on inspections, I had one agent, and this was during COVID, where, the kids weren't in school yet, but the parents had to go back to work. So I had this beautiful teenage girl home alone when they scheduled the inspection. And I told the agent, you're going to be there, right? And she goes, oh yeah, I'll be there. I said, because there's teenagers home alone, which actually it's not really legal to go into a house like that in that scenario. You can't go in a house with kids unescorted. And so she said, oh yeah, tell the kiddos, don't worry, I'll be there, right? And I just didn't trust her. You know how you have spidey sense about things? I didn't trust her. So I sent my assistant there to meet them at the inspection and confirm it. And sure enough, when we got there, the digital lockbox was wide open. Two strange men in the home, agent wasn't there.
Hmm.
Two strange men were doing the inspection. Fortunately, the teenager was sitting in her truck, but I had a hissy fit about that one because I asked her, I called her out on it, and I said, hey, how would you feel if some agent let two strange men in your house when you had teenagers home alone? And her answer was, why are you so mean to me? So on that one, I held back 1,000 in commission. I tried this punishment thing in the MLS. They struck it down. They wouldn't let me do it. But I said, hey, if you do any of these things, we're gonna whack your commission by $1,000, which I know we couldn't do. It was just to get their attention. But in this case, I did. So at the closing table, because I tried to resolve the issue with the broker and they didn't seem to care. At the closing table, now they're paying attention and they're like, well, you can't do that. And I'm like, okay, I'm still going to do it. And they said, well, we're going to take you to arbitration. I said, please, I can't wait to go and tell this story. And it ended up about 6 months later that they decided to just let it go. And I just sent the money to the sellers because it was their risk to have some agent let these men in the house with their daughter who was forced to be home alone. It was just crazy town. So there's no standardization on how to do the job. And agents think how to do the job is how they've always done it, right?
We have a website, Barb Has the Buyers, and
Yeah.
that's a selling opportunity. And maybe agents don't see the value of that, but if you're a seller and you're trying to sell your home, I feel like someone that already has the buyers for me may be a value proposition I'd want to consider. So that in itself is, and you have been collecting buyers, I assume, over a period of time through lead generation or using listings to create those opportunities to start building a library of buyers. Talk a little bit about what that is and how that's affected your business.
Well, I was one of the original agents that had the commissions that would change names to Sync. I had
Sync,
Sync.
yeah.
We accumulated about 28,400 registered buyers. So I could show up at any listing and show thousands of buyers and at least 100 or more that would match their home. So I could prove to them in person, I would put their house into the system and show up with a printout of the buyers that matched their home.
Wow.
And so it was very effective to get in the door. But what I found was the internet leads weren't really as right now buyers. They weren't as right now buyers as, say, people that are going to open houses or people that are contacting on Zillow and stuff like that. So we let sync go. We're doing something like that through Barb Has the Buyers, where they actually get an automatic IDX feed. But I was one of the first ones to bring the whole IDX. What IDX means is you automatically connect to the MLS. Okay. And if the buyers put in their criteria, they will get homes that match their criteria sent to them every day if they want. And that's nice, but the people that are nowadays, what's changed is everybody's shopping on their phone, and the buyers aren't just shopping on one website. They're shopping on probably a half dozen websites on average. They're looking everywhere because they don't trust what they get on Zillow or Realtor, or if they have an MLS feed, they don't trust that it's all going to be the same, which it isn't. There's a lot of homes that get sold off market. So basically, it's just a marketing phrase. And the way it came about, I was at one of the conferences. I walked by one of my colleagues from Phoenix, the famous Carol Royce. And she goes, yeah, we're advertising Carol Has the Buyers on the radio and getting sellers to call us. And that moment, I whipped out my iPad and bought barbhasthebuyers.com because it's very easy to remember. It's when you advertise on the radio, people are listening. They have a hard time remembering phone numbers, but they're really good at remembering that. So I'm known for that. They can't remember Schlinker. That's a hard name to remember, but they remember Barb Has the Buyers. So it's been a really good investment for me. But those aren't the only buyers. We also have cash buyers. We have investors. We can show up at any listing with about a dozen cash offers on their home out of the gate. Now, I don't know many agents that can do that. Most of them show up and all they have is, we'll throw it in the MLS, post and hope some other agent has a buyer. That's what the typical industry offers. And it's not good enough.
No, it makes you a commodity. It makes
Yep.
you replaceable. It makes you not fairly ask for proper compensation because you're just like everyone else. So you have
Exactly.
to set yourself apart or you're just like everyone else. So you have, I've got all your social media. Thank you. Your assistant sent me that. So I'm going to post that in our YouTube channel so people can see that. And then you also have your YouTube channel, which is Barb Has the Buyers on your YouTube channel. And I think some of your radio show episodes and stuff get posted in there as well.
Yeah, all of
Yeah,
them do.
yeah,
So what we
yeah.
do is we record it just like you're recording this one. And I have my virtual assistant take it and repurpose it. So he puts it on YouTube. We also put it on all the audio podcast platforms so they can listen to it. I have one client right now. He's in Mexico and he listens to it online somehow. I don't know how he does it. I should ask him.
Well, I love
So
it. All right. Well, Barb, I appreciate you jumping in. You gave me, I mean, you shared everything you could share in those spaces, and there's a whole lot more we can talk about. I know we didn't even talk about doing a pre-inspection on a home or,
yeah,
and there's a couple other things I wanted to get to, but unfortunately, we are running out of time. But thank you for getting on and I appreciate you being candid with us. Thank you, Barb.
yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
And for all of you out there, if you enjoy the episode and you want more information about Barb, I'm going to post the comments and information below so you can click on it, check her out. And she does have her radio broadcast posted on there as well, so you can listen to that. Get some tips. She's here. She's helping. You know, she's like me. We're both very collaborative. If there's anything you want to learn more about, just send us a message and we're happy to share. Until next time, if you like the episode, please and subscribe. And I've got more coming out every single week. So until next time, have a high performance week. Thank you. That wraps up another episode of Real Estate Success DFW. I hope you're leaving with new insights that push your real estate career forward. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with fellow agents who's ready to succeed. And if you're interested in working together or have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me directly. My personal phone is 214-228-0383. Let's connect and make real estate success happen together. Until next time, keep pushing forward. I'm Shaune Corbett, and this is the Real Estate Success DFW. Have a high performance week.